Hello and welcome back to another video, and today we are talking about the SATs results. And we're not talking about kind of the number of percentages of what people have got. We might go into that one in a bit. In the future, we're not going to talk about how schools have specifically done. We're just going to talk about what the SATs results mean, how they can impact the kids, how they can impact the teachers, how they can impact entire schools, because they can in some ways have a massive impact, they can in some ways have very little impact. And it's important to kind of remember just what they are, because I think sometimes the pressure that goes into these results on teachers and on children can be absolutely huge, and it's about kind of taking some of that pressure off and realizing just what they are and actually how they don't always mean that much. So looking at SATs results, first of all, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, then SATs are the tests that they do at the end of Key Stage 1 and into Key Stage 2, so they're done in Year 2 and in Year 6. And we're going to specifically talk about the ones that are done in Year 6 here. So these results have just been released this week, and children should have been getting the results either when they got released on the week or sometimes at the end of the week in like a report or something like that. And so they should have all kind of know what results they got in their SATs by now. It's important to remember that these results are purely a way for the government to assess how schools are doing. They're not a way to assess how children are doing, and yes, the children do get a score, and that score will be something like working below their age level, working towards it, expected, so working at the right level, or greater depth, working above the level they should be at Year 6, and they will get a grade like that. That grade means very, very little in the sense of actually there's a lot of other things that go into being a person, to doing well at school, than just getting some marks right on one test. And if they haven't got the marks right on that one test, well, you know what, that might have just been a bad day, and your teacher will be kind of have an overall view of how that child's doing. It's very similar to tests when you do them a bit later on. I'll talk about the difference in kind of Key Stage 2 tests and things like GCSEs in a little bit. But yeah, they're a way for the government to assess schools, and so personally I think actually it's far more important for the school that children do well than actually it is for themselves. Because I know when I've spoken to teachers that work in kind of Year 7, Year 8, Year 9, they all say the same thing. They all say that as soon as those children get to school at your secondary school, then the first thing they'll do is they'll go through a whole bunch of kind of baseline tests, and they'll test themselves after the 6-week holidays to see where they're at compared to where they want them to be, and then they'll either get put into sets or they'll get put into groups, or they'll be judged off that. They won't get judged off their SATs result. And that makes perfect sense, because we all know over the 6-week holidays children forget loads. We also know that the pressure the schools are under to help them do well means sometimes they are learning to a specific kind of what might come up on the test rather than the overall curriculum at the end of Year 6. And it just kind of makes sense that actually we should judge the children on who they are, not what they've done in one test result. So first of all, it's a way of kind of taking the pressure off the children a bit, and that yes, it's so important to do really well, and yes, it's so important to try your best, and yes, it's so important to have that good work ethic about, you know what, you've got a test coming up, so get some revision done and do your best for it, because it'll help you when you get older and you get more and more important tests, as I'm about to go into. But actually, let's take the pressure off a little bit and say, look, you know what guys, when you get to comp, when you get to secondary school, they're going to do a judgment on you there, and then that'll be kind of what starts you off in your secondary school career. So don't worry too much about this one right now. And that's also important when you think about kind of selective secondary schools, so grammar schools, that kind of thing, private schools, where actually, you know, you might have a test to take to get into that school. And again, so that doesn't mean your SATs results don't matter at all, because if you've not done your SATs, then you need to do that selective entrance test to get into that school, and then they'll judge you off that ability score, whatever that might be, a verbal reasoning test, a non-verbal reasoning test, that type of thing. And so again, it's just about making sure that, look, this is one test, it's going to be brilliant for you for one test period, and then when you do your next test, that's now the most important one. And that's where we come on to things like GCSEs, because the fact is, these SATs tests, you don't have to get a certain score to get into a secondary school, you don't have to get a certain mark to get onto the next level. Sometimes with GCSEs, with A-levels, you need to get a certain number of GCSEs to get into sixth form, you need to get a certain number of A-levels to get to university, you need to get certain grades, that kind of thing. There's a lot more pressure on those to get into the next step. For Year 6 SATs, you know what, if they don't do that well, yes, it doesn't look great and it's not ideal, but for them, they'll still be able to move on to Year 7. They might just have had one really bad day, and that does happen. We all have bad days sometimes where they've not done very well, but actually they'll still be able to move on and get the right scores next time. So I think it's about remembering, actually, let's take away the pressure off these SATs tests. Let's do our best to remind the children that yes, they're tests, and yes, we want them to do well, but it does not matter too much if they don't. Let's just try and take the pressure off a little bit and say, look, just relax, answer every question that you can and see what you can do. And that's where we kind of move on to teachers and say, look, actually, the teachers can be put under so much pressure as well. Teachers can feel strung up by these SATs results. The government's come out recently, and I'll try and put a screenshot of it up on the screen if I can. I think they said that they want all schools to be hitting 90% of combined reading, writing, maths scores. And so across the year group, 90% of children should get expected in all those 3 grades. Now, if we look at the percentage of scores that we got this year, and I said I'm not going to look at these very much because I'm going to look at them in a future video. The scores that we got, I'll put up on the screen now. I can't remember what it is, but it's nowhere near that. And so it's about thinking one set, the pressure that's been put on teachers is extreme. The government hasn't announced any funding for it. They haven't announced a way they're going to help schools get this target. They haven't announced anything to do with improving schools and making them better to help with that. They've just said, look, we want you to do that. And it's almost as if they're saying the schools aren't currently trying their best, because I'm sure every single school in the country would be delighted to get 90% combined reading, writing and math scores. They'd be absolutely over the moon if they got those kind of results. Because if you've got a class of 30 children, 90% of 30, that's about 27 kids. That's insane to say 27 of your class have got exactly where they need to be at least. And so I think, first of all, it's about saying, look, the pressure on schools is immense. And especially now we're in Academy Trust, they not only get judged on a league table across a school, but if you're in an academy of 3, 4, 8 schools, who knows how many schools might be in that academy, then you're also then getting judged on that academy as well. So where you come in, your Academy Trust, and what kind of level you're at in there, whether you're at the top, at the bottom, in the middle. It's all just about, it's the pressure, it's the comparison, it's the judging these schools. And so that can filter right the way through from the head teacher, who's obviously ultimately responsible for the school and how they've done, down to the year 6 teacher, who's obviously taught them in year 6. But then also you look at the teachers before that, because the SATs papers don't just judge year 6 content, they judge what they've learned throughout the entire primary school. So every teacher has a role to play in terms of teaching the children effectively, correctly, to make sure they're ready to take these tests at the end of year 6. And again, it's about remembering for these teachers that, look, yes, these are here to judge you as a school, but there's so much more to being a good school than getting good SATs results. And yes, you definitely do want to get the best results you can. You want the children to do as well as you can, and you teach them in a way to help them prepare for that SATs test. But that doesn't mean that if they don't do well, they've not had a good primary school career. That doesn't mean if they don't do very well, they've not enjoyed themselves. There's so much more to doing things around the SATs, and there's so much more that you can do in primary school, especially, and you see it every year once the SATs finishes and the children kind of take their foot off the gas a little bit, and all of a sudden they help out at things. They can do sports days, they can do fun stuff at the end of school, and that's what primary school is all about. It's about doing those things as a community, working with the people in the local area, and getting the children to enjoy themselves while they're learning. There's so much more to do than these SATs tests. And so hopefully you guys that have got SATs results recently have been very, very happy with your results. Hopefully they've been what you're expecting, and if they're not quite what you're expecting, then hopefully you'll be able to take some lessons away from that and see what you can change ready for next year, because I'm sure the SATs will be rolling around again come May time next year. But as always, guys, don't string everything up on these results. Look at the children in your year 6 class and think, are they walking away from primary school with a happy memory? Are they walking away with a future that they're looking forward to? Are they walking away having said, you know what, I've loved my primary school career and I don't really want to leave, even though it's the right thing for me, because they've had such a good time there? And if they're thinking all those things, then you know what, they've had a great time, if they're happy, then that's what matters. And there's always going to be things you can improve on. There's always going to be things you can work on. There's always going to be in the back of your head that 90% that we apparently need to get by the government. But you know what, those things change. What doesn't change is the child's memories once they finish primary school. They'll have those memories forever, and if they're happy memories, then you know you've done a good job. So hopefully you guys are happy with your SATs results, and hopefully you're happy with your year 6 leavers as they're getting ready to leave primary school for the final time. And hopefully those children are happy to be leaving, but in a good way, happy to be moving on, happy to be looking forward to the next step in their careers. So thank you very much for watching this, guys. I hope you're ready to take the pressure off a little bit and enjoy the sunshine that is out at the minute. And as always, a new video on a Tuesday, a Friday and a Sunday, and I'll see you very soon.